Peter Trent joins us now, former mayor of Westmount. He has become a commentator you read frequently in the Gazette. And the headline on his latest missive in the Gazette is, "In Quebec, anglos just don't count." And he lays out the argument that suppressing English comes with a steep economic cost. Peter Trent, thanks for joining us again on CJD.
It's my pleasure.
Have you been ruminating about this for a while?
I think like all Anglos in Quebec, we've probably been ruminating about this for decades. I think it's the only thing that actually holds us together.
Yeah, you know what? I think you're probably right, because what do we talk about, right, when we get together with fellow Anglos is, you know, the latest bruise that our community has suffered. Looking specifically at some of the numbers that you looked at in your piece, which is the one centered on the Anglophone community that is most telltale for you?
I would say start off with the fact that, of course, we're much fewer in numbers. We used to be something like 13% of the population of Quebec. We're down to about 9%. But most importantly, I would say that it's the constant barrage of pro-Francophone ideas coming out of Quebec that has been just a little too much. I can recall at the time where I was fighting the mergers, and we were so concerned about what would happen to English-speaking people after the mergers, because, as I mentioned in my column, they changed the rules. It used to be a majority non-French-speaking would mean you could have bilingual status, and then the PQ realized that if they did that, in 20 years' time, the French will be a minority on the island of Montreal, and guess what? We would be have the right to have bilingual status. So, of course, what they did, they changed the rules, which, of course, they're very good at doing that kind of thing, as is the CAQ, I must say. Anyway, all to say, I would say that the fact that not only are we reduced in number, but we're reduced in power. We have no leadership, certainly no leaders anyway. And that they change the rules such that bilingual cities are become a bit of a rare avis, a rare bird. And so I think that Reed Scowen, my old friend Reed Scowen, called it right 25 years ago when he said effectively that Anglos are on the decline. I don't say it's absolutely permanent. I think that some things can change, but certainly in the way we're going now, if you extrapolate what's happening, it's pretty clear that the Anglo community in Quebec, and specifically the island of Montreal, is diminishing. Not necessarily in numbers, but is much more in power. And until we get a government realizing that they're shooting themselves in their linguistic foot, if I can mix bodily metaphors, by going after the English and trying to restrict English, because English is a lingua franca around the world. It's an international tool. You cannot ignore English. It's silly. And if you wish to have a problem with the Anglophones who are what do they call it? Historic Anglophones. Give a thought to those people who have actually adopted English as a language, and use that as an advantage on the island of Montreal to actually have half the island French, half the island English. Why can't we exploit this to our advantage instead of looking at it as a kind of disease, you know? And so this is what bothers me, and I think it really came to a head over the last couple of years because of the CAQ, because at least with the PQ, you weren't surprised. But with the CAQ, they're sort of like the PQ in wolf's clothing, you know?
Yes, I think a lot of people who, Anglophones who voted CAQ for other reasons, yes, primarily economic reasons, seem to have been caught by surprise by this courting of the hardline language voter by the CAQ. No optimism as with there are two key leadership races coming up for us here in Montreal. One is the leadership of Valérie Plante's party, because she is not going to seek re-election. And the other is the leadership of the provincial Liberals. Do you see no candidates in that mix who you think might become an ally of the Anglophone community?
Not so far. I think my friend Denis Coderre is pretty much out of the running right now, but I would say that there's nobody running at the provincial level that I can see would be a champion, not just of the English, a champion of Montreal, because all we're getting is Montreal bashing as well as the Anglo bashing. So at the provincial level, I see no real savior at this point. And certainly running for the city of Montreal, we have just a bunch of the same people who were running it for the last 2 terms. We need a change. We need a change so the accent becomes a lot more on the economic issues. But as I've made it clear in a number of my columns, unfortunately, we're not getting people running for mayor or for general council of the city of Montreal who have really any serious, solid business background, and we need more of that. I think we have enough of the focus on bike paths, and it's about time we sort of focused on dollars and cents, starting with the fact that the average Montreal employee makes nearly 50% more than the rest of the public sector. You know, that's number one place where we can really save money or spend it more wisely. But I really think we need to get rid of the fixation on bike paths and focus on the economic well-being of the city and ergo the people living in the city.
In your piece for the Gazette, you framed Montreal's kind of strange situation in a way that I hadn't thought of before, a kind of a different perspective. You said many francophones have already said goodbye to Montreal, leaving to the non-French majority the burden of preserving a dwindling French minority. And I kind of read that and thought, yeah, why is it on us?
Well, I don't think most people even know the stats of that, because they're not your amount of homework to come up with, and discovered that on the island of Montreal that we now have only 46.5% French, and even in the city of Montreal, as is currently organized, and this is of course the 2001 census, there's 49.5% francophones. So if you use the old criterion that we used to use for allowing for bilingual status, that would mean that indeed the island of Montreal and the city of Montreal should have bilingual status. Of course, that would be anathema to our friends in Quebec City, but that's a fact. They were the rules, and those rules made sense. So I would say that I don't think many people realize that the French have now gone below the 50% level, even in the city of Montreal. And I don't think they realize that around the penumbra outside of Montreal and Laval, by the way, because Laval is only 56% French. 56% French in Laval. So if you go beyond those 2 islands, the rest is 80% French. So all the French have just simply decamped to places like Bois-Birion and off island. And they are middle class people, and instead of the if I may say this, the Projet Montréal fixation on worrying about the poor, which is a very legitimate fixation, but we also have to worry about the middle class because they're paying the shot. And what we're doing, we're seeing a hollowing out of the island of Montreal, not just the francophones, but of the middle class, well-off or relatively well-off people. They've all decamped. Number one, because they can't stand paying the high Montreal taxes. But so I would say that I don't think we realized. In fact, I hadn't realized as much as I now know after doing my homework is how much the French have indeed left the island of Montreal and left the island of Laval too, leaving obviously allophones and anglophones, which of course is the reason why there's quotation marks a problem. I look at it as actually maybe it's in our advantage. If we look through the other end of the telescope and say, hey, look, this is great. We have half the population of the island of Montreal is not French. Let's combine those forces. For 18 years, I was an entrepreneur. My partner, Raymond Charlebois, was French. And it's amazing how a French-English combination, we thought very differently about things. But together, we came up with things we would never have done had we been of the same language membership.
Peter Trent, thanks very much for your time. Much appreciated.
My pleasure.
All right, and you can read that full piece by Peter Trent in the Gazette.